Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Eric Cohn, and I'm the executive editor of IndieWire. Welcoming here today, Sacha Baron Cohen from Borat's subsequent movie film, as well as the director, Jason Walliner. So thank you both for being here. Sacha, I think it's worth talking about how you define what you've made here, because a lot of times people look at what you do and they think, oh, it's a mockumentary. But there's also something documentary-like about it. And given the world that you were making here, sort of approaching Borat as someone who is in America in 2020, can you tell us a bit about what it was that you wanted to document about America when making this film?
So yes, it is a documentary. It's also a movie, and it's not a mockumentary in that there are two elements to it. There's the documentary, Borat, a fake character in a real world, and then there are the scenes which are Borat with Tutar and Borat the Villagers. So those are, essentially scripted movie scenes. The aim here was to release a movie prior to the election that was a hilarious film and a touching film, but at its core was a catalogue of Trump's and the Trump government's misdemeanors over the last 4 years, and about the danger of Trumpism and its existential threats to American democracy.
So Jason, can you talk from a filmmaking standpoint about, given that sort of priority being in place from the get-go, what kind of challenges does that create, knowing that there's this greater purpose you're looking to capture, but also it needs to be funny, it's got a story to tell and all of that?
Yeah, and on top of that, I feel like the biggest challenge, which I said to Sacha when we first met about it, is following up what I consider to be the funniest movie of all time. Starting from a place of massive expectations, but not only a normal movie. It's Borat. It's a movie shot in public, so a sequel would seem impossible. And to do that, in public, it would have to be completely in secret. People couldn't know that he was doing it. And, Borat is now one of the most famous comedy characters in pop culture in the last century. So on top of that, there's the inspiration of the movie, which Sacha was talking about, which is, highlight what America has become under Trump. How is America different? Crystallize what it's like in at the time it was 2019. This is before COVID. And that, again, really changed everything.
Sacha, you've always excelled at this unique process of sort of eliciting people's covert biases or sometimes overt biases on so many different levels. And I wonder in this particular case, how you mapped out the biases you wanted to elicit. What was sort of the process like in terms of figuring out who the targets were going to be in this go around?
Well, I think... So this is a story about the world's biggest misogynist, not Donald Trump, becoming a feminist. Borat comes from this incredibly patriarchal society where women are seen as below animals. And at the end, he's ready to sacrifice his life to let his daughter make her own choices. And so that subject of do women have a right to choose was something that we wanted to discuss. And obviously one of those big examples of that is, does a woman have a right to choose what to do with their own body? In the Pregnancy Crisis Center, we wanted to see what would happen if we presented a case of a 15-year-old girl who has been impregnated by her own father. Surely then those people who are pro-life would say, okay, you can have the abortion. And amazingly, but not surprisingly, because we've done a lot of research on it, the pastor who was masquerading as a doctor encourages Tutar to have the child, even though it's incestuous and she's underage. And she doesn't want it. Each scene has a different satirical point. Some scenes are just trying to be funny. Some scenes are just trying to progress the emotional development between these two characters. And, there are very specific moments that we've got to hit to engage the audience. over 90 minutes. With the gun rally where Borat accidentally ends up on stage and sings a song called the Wuhan Flu, the question we wanted answered was, would these Trump supporters participate in a song which actively encouraged the murder of political opponents? It's a funny song, it's enjoyable, but really the idea would be to demonstrate the dangerous slide into authoritarianism and its violent end place.
And this is obviously on a continuum with the work that you've done as sort of a performer who performs for an audience that doesn't realize they're part of it. Throw the Jew down the well looms large in the legacy here. But Jason, you're entering into this as somebody who has to kind of watch this stuff on a monitor, I assume, and kind of figure out when you've got it. And I would love to hear a bit about how it's different from a traditional set. I mean, you can't just call cut, right?
Yeah, it's different in just about every way from a traditional set. Obviously there are the scenes with Borat and Tutar that are these kind of connective story scenes that are more scripted, that we do improvise. And, otherwise there's really two types of scenes. There are these smaller scenes with real people where, yeah, as you're saying, there's no multiple takes. There's no, can we do that again, call cut? There's one shot at it. And a lot of the work there is just about, all these people are real. They're not aware that they're in a comedy movie or a movie at all. And we never tell people what to say, how to react. We can't. We want real reactions. We want them to reveal themselves, sometimes darker parts of themselves, but often in this movie, positive things about themselves. We thought that would be kind of certainly a fresh thing to do with this movie, is to, show the kindness of people, the empathy, the good side of people. But really, it's generally about creating these environments where people can be revealing of themselves, and then just kind of letting it happen. And then, on a technical side, communicating with the camera operators, making sure they're covering it from the right angle so that it'll actually make sense on screen. Sometimes, quietly communicating, Sasha and I will find a corner, so have different ways of the scene to go or adjustments or what have you. But it's all kind of on the fly because, you really can only do this stuff once. And then there are these bigger events, CPAC or the rally, and all of that stuff is just a tremendous amount, sometimes months of planning, to kind of just figure out everything that could happen in these situations. And then a lot of it is safety, making sure you can get out, making sure our crew will be safe, making sure everything we're doing is totally legal. And then you just kind of cross your fingers and go for it.
If we wanted to do a scripted movie that was Borat grows to love his daughter and it's really, really funny, that would be a challenge for us. A scene like CPAC, every element of it has to be perfect. So the Trump mask, we worked on that for months. We worked with Mark Coulier, who's a multiple Oscar winner, on various versions of how could we change my head into Trump's. And then there's how do we get past all the layers of security and Secret Service and TSA to smuggle me into that event. Then there's the actual scene itself. How do we make sure that that's as funny as possible? How do we get the right shots that convey the emotion and move the story forward? Because this isn't a stunt or a 3-minute bit on a late night show. This is part of a movie and everything has to develop properly. And then there's the security, physical safety aspect of it. Once I'm taken away by Secret Service, how do we ensure that I'm not arrested? We had a bail lawyer on site who I tried to speak to when I was being interrogated, questioned by the Secret Service. And I said, I demand to see my lawyer. He's on the other side of this door. I said, I insist that you open that door immediately. And they just said no. So all that stuff you've seen in the movies is thrown out when you are dealing with the Secret Service.
And the other thing is, Sasha was in hours of prosthetics, so it wasn't just a mask he could pull off Mission Impossible style.
Yeah, you have to think of things like, you have to have a doctor's note to say, if you rip this mask off, you're going to rip off the person underneath its skin.
Well, let me ask you about Giuliani as sort of a case study in your writing process, because I would love to hear you talk a bit about what you were sort of expecting to happen there, or what sort of beats you prepared for, and what surprised you about the way it played out.
The Giuliani scene is the climax of the movie. It is the end of The Graduate. It's the wedding scene, and we've seen it in many rom-coms of Borat is essentially the one who's going to try and stop the wedding from happening, and will he get there in time? Then obviously there is a real scene going on. So you want to make sure that the scene is hilarious, that it's great, that it reveals everything we want it to reveal about the unspoken misogyny of Trump's inner circle. By the way, he refused to take a COVID test.
Yeah. So Sasha was hiding in a cubby that we had built in the closet, and he and I were communicating.
An hour and a half in a pitch black, 1 meter wide by 2 meter high cubby.
And remember, he had to change in there. There's no cut change from the sound guy into the lingerie. That's all while the scene is happening. There's nowhere else he can go. So he's in the dark.
I was basically changing in silence in this pitch black, tiny cupboard while trying to communicate with Jason.
And Rudy's sitting a few feet away. I'm sitting in a nearby room that we made into a little control room with Ant. And Sasha and I are trying to determine, do we go in now or is it going to go further? Do we go in? Do we end it? Or can we watch this play out? He went into the bedroom with her.
I think it's good we went in at the moment we did.
Yeah, we went in at the right moment. I mean, look, he rubs her shoulder. He sits on the bed. He asks for her phone number. I mean, just every step of the way. It's like, do we end it? Do we end it? And he lays on the bed and he puts his, it's all there. What you see on screen is what happened. And then we were like, you should probably go now.
Every character you do seems to have its own unique lifespan. And I'm sure after you did the last Borat movie, you didn't know that in 2020, we would really need him to come back and help our society out a bit. But what sort of future do you see for this character? Did you put him to bed here, or is there a future for Borat in terms of what you can do?
These movies are so exhausting because they are you have to immerse yourself in the character completely. Then you've got all the legal pressures, the pressure of the story changing all the time, the pressure of trying to ensure that you're safe and the rest of the crew are safe, being the first movie to shoot during coronavirus, trying to make sure that you don't get arrested, that you don't get shot. It's too engrossing to ever plan for the future, but he's gone to bed. I don't know if you'll see him again.
Thank you both for being here. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot, mate.
Thanks, Eric.